I am a firm believer in the grocery pickup because you can see everything in your cart online before you check out, so I know exactly what I'm paying for. Welcome to Life Unleashed,
the podcast all about creating the best life for you and your furry best friend.
If you're a dog mom on the go, juggling life, work, and the endless joys of being a dog parent, then you're in the right place. I'm Dani.
And I'm Nick.
And together with the incredible dog mom community from Tails Up Pup, we're here to share advice, stories, and the obsession we have over the love for our dogs.
Get ready to laugh, learn, and lean on each other because life with your dog just got even more awesome.
New year, new habits. We are going to tackle them early on.
It is 2024.
It is not the first podcast of 2024, but it is the second, and we are coming in hot with some great advice. If you follow my personal page, this is probably the most commented questions that I get because I share a lot about what I eat. So we're going to be sharing all things meal prepping. And if your New Year's resolution is to save time to do things that you like to do, if your New Year's resolution is to save money, that was probably the biggest one I saw when I asked on Tails Up Pup. And if your New Year's resolution is anything to do with weight loss, health, anything like that, meal prepping hits all of those.
I have to give Danielle 100% credit for the meal prep in the Karis household because I am not a meal prepper. I'm kind of like the eat the same thing. If you guys have been following the podcast, you know I can do the same stuff, but I'm never was a meal prepper. Danielle, what made you get into meal prepping from the beginning? Because you really were the reason that we do it.
The biggest thing for me is not spending a lot of money on food eating out. I would say money is the number one thing, but then again, I also have always been pretty health conscious, and so eating out is not usually the healthiest option. Really, those two things are my main reasons. And if you are not prepared in what you're about to eat when you're going to work the next day or even that day, you're going to eat out because you don't have time to deal with it anymore. And it's convenient to order something. But if you plan ahead and have it already, then all of your issues are solved.
Speaking of the saving money part, this is a little tangent story. The other night, Danielle was like, I really want to have hamburgers, and we were going to order them. And I think it was going to be like literally $50-something when it came to like for two hamburgers and like the family fry. And I was like, you know what? Let me just run over to the grocery store. And for the burgers and everything, it was $12, and we still had stuff left over.
That was crazy.
That is multiplied for meal prepping.
Usually I'm the shopper, so I can see that multiple times a week, but Nick did the shopping, and that really, I feel like opened your eyes. That's why that moment is still so important to you.
I mean, groceries are expensive, but when you consider them against eating out, it is literally insane.
It's astronomically different.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the saving money part of meal prep?
Well, okay, there's lots of different ways that you can save money. Obviously, if you eat out, if you just get a sandwich out, it's going to be, $15, where if you buy stuff to make sandwiches, it'll probably be $15 for the whole week.
Well, one thing that I'll say too that really helps somebody if you're like a numbers person, all you have to do is just get a little Excel sheet out and put in like your average, if you eat out a lot, your average lunch cost eating out, and maybe do that for, if you want to, you'll get the big number, do it for the year and see that number. And then just take what you think is you could either cut it, in half or a fourth at least with your meal prep and just look at the difference in those numbers. And that is going to be shocking to you.
The other way to save money is bulk buying. So if you have a membership at a place like Costco, you can buy chicken breasts in bulk and then you can freeze them. That's like the number one thing that we do. We eat a ton of chicken because it's cheap, it's easy, and it heats up well. So definitely freeze your meat. If you're not going to a place like Costco, even if you're going to the grocery store, if there is a sale on things, you can stock up while it's on sale and then freeze them as well. Or you could also choose what you're going to make based on what's on sale.
I feel like, speaking of the freezing stuff, I'm kind of the person that what had to be converted throughout this process. So I'm going to share my experience with that. Freezing stuff, I was so anti freezing food and re-thawing it out. I think that is because I was not really a planner when it came to eating. And so if you freeze a chicken breast, you kind of have to plan the night before, unless you're going to run it in water for 10 minutes or something like that you're going to eat it. So I was not a planner, and I also thought that freezing food just was not going to taste the same or as good. But both of those things you can overcome. You can become a planner and it tastes honestly, I don't think you'd know the difference.
And it usually tastes fresher when you freeze it because you're freezing it when it's fresh. So then when you unfreeze it, it still tastes as fresh.
And if you're like me and someone that thinks that frozen food is not going to taste that good and you like to eat out, a little news flash for you, probably a lot of restaurants have frozen food.
Yeah. So
and they're thawing it out.
You got to get over the frozen food thing. It's great. If you are not a planner or you're brand new to this, my biggest tip for advice, if you are putting things in your freezer, is to make a list of what's in your freezer and maybe like the dates that you put it in there, because freezers are deep or wide, whatever. Things get lost in there, especially if they're not in their original containers. If you're putting them in Ziploc bags, then you need to know what is in your freezer so that you actually use it, because it is very easy to put things in the freezer and then never use them, and then you wasted your food. So make a list, have a freezer list, or I don't know, whatever works well for you. That would just be my tip of advice.
And if you're wasting your food, then, I mean, you're still going to be cheaper, but then, like, you're kind of, like,
no,
not
we are
saving.
not wasting in 2024. We are going to use what we have. I follow a girl on TikTok. Her name is Alex, and she shares a lot of meal recipes, and she says we eat what we have. So you got to, maybe you go to the grocery store, you get one thing of, like, pork chops, but then what are you going to eat with those? You're going to eat what you have in your freezer, which might be vegetables, mashed potatoes, I don't know, whatever it is. But you're going to eat what you have.
So where do you come up with, like, the list for, like, what are kind of, like, our budget-friendly types of foods for meal prep?
So my number one thing is Pinterest. I will go on there and type in meal prep lunch ideas and get some new ideas on there. I also know myself, I usually like a cold lunch. I am not as much a hot lunch person, but I do rotate them out. I will eat a hot lunch, and that also will depend if you are going to a workplace that has a microwave, has a fridge. You need to make meals on what appliances you have available, I guess. And if you're work from home, then maybe you would make something that you could throw back on the stove or something like that. So whatever your life experience is will definitely play an effect of what you're making.
Do you have, like, an overall budget that you use for meal prepping?
We have an
the lunches?
We have an overall budget for our groceries for the week, but not specifically for the lunches. I don't ever pay much attention to each specific meal, but I would go back on like what I am making, those types of meals. And you can go a little too far sometimes on Pinterest because it gets a little wild. So if you're going to use what you have or what you like, another great thing is to use AI like a ChatGPT, because you can put in the ingredients that you have and then ask it to give you recipes based on what you have. So then you're really going to utilize what you have. Or again, if like, for example, chicken thighs are on sale and you want to use those instead of chicken breasts, you could find a recipe to use those to utilize what's on sale.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing that you do a lot is you shop online and then you go pick up the groceries, but like you'll see like, oh, so-and-so pork chops are on sale right now. And then before you order, you'll go look up and make sure you can find like a really good like recipe for the pork chops or the chicken thighs or whatever the thing you are doing.
Yes, that would be my other tip for saving money. I am a firm believer in the grocery pickup because you can see everything in your cart online before you check out. So I know exactly what I'm paying for, where when you're walking through the aisles, it's very easy to get distracted and you're not doing all the mental math, so you don't really know what it adds up to. And it's much easier to use the digital coupons online than it is in the store, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like this podcast is like, the theme is we are saving time and money, and picking up your groceries is literally, Danielle is the grocery person in this household, but I did get to do it one time where I did the pickup and it was unbelievable. I was in and out of there in 3 minutes and I didn't buy, and I'm so the person that walks down the aisle. I'm like, oh, I gotta have that. I gotta have that. Oh, wow, that looks good. And of course I always go hungry to the grocery stores. So you can't do any of those things if you shop on like the Kroger website and go pick it up.
I didn't want to get too far into like what exact meals that we make for our meal prep, simply because everyone has their different preferences. But the main things that I feel like we lean on are salads with protein or rice bowls with protein. So we love like a chicken, rice, and broccoli bowl. Also, we are big believers in hummus. I actually make my own hummus now. It's cheaper. It's so easy. If you just get like the simple ingredients, you'll always have them in your house. Very easy to make. Lots of vegetables. and things like that.
Another really big important piece of meal prep, and this is a saving money thing if you were going to be putting it in like Ziploc bags or disposable containers, but that is, what do you put your meals in? I know Danielle can geek out a little bit on her because she just got some new containers.
I got the new Bentgo containers. I love them. They have 2 separate compartments, and I also have the lunch box, which is very convenient to bring it to work. But really any containers will do. You can get them at Target. You can get them at Costco. But I would say think about what you're going to be making and then find containers that work best for that. We have a bunch of different containers. Like I have ones that I prefer salad in and ones that I prefer pasta in and ones that I prefer rice bowls in. But that just my container obsession came over time. I obviously started with one and I made that work for all of the things. And then as I did more and more, then we got more containers.
And I feel like with anything, the easier you make something, the more likely you are to stick with it. And definitely we literally used to have like one container for each of us and have to wash that every single time. And that's one of those things that you're going to get really annoyed every day coming back and having to wash that same container. If you're going to go into meal prepping, get your 5 containers for the week for you, or if you're doing it for 2 people, get your 10 containers. And that way you don't have to worry about washing them every single time.
If you are starting off and you only have 1 container, you can meal prep all the ingredients and store it in your fridge in bigger containers or whatever you have. And then every day you're going to have to wash the one that you're bringing to work. But then that night before, you can put it in your container and have it ready to go the next morning. And that's what we did for a very long time. And still we do that way sometimes. It just depends on what we're making, I feel like.
Yeah, it does depend on the thing. Okay, so now we talked all about the saving money and how awesome that is. Let's talk about probably my favorite part of it, which is like the time saving piece of meal prep.
So yes, it takes a lot of time to do it, but you're doing it in bulk at one time. So overall, you're definitely saving the time if you're going to cook those meals every day the night before or something. If you are someone who's going out all the time, then obviously it's not going to save that much time because you're not spending much time.
But it does, unless you're ordering the food to come to you. Going out to get, like, even if you're literally going to a drive-thru and picking it up, that takes 10 to 15 minutes. And if it's a little bit further away from where you're going, it could take even longer than that.
But overall, I would say that we spend about an hour meal prepping for the week. And that is not a lot of time when you think about all the things that are going into it.
Yeah, if you include like the grocery shopping, all the stuff, I bet it's about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours when it's all said and done. But you're
grocery shopping anyways, so I feel like that time doesn't really count.
Doesn't really count.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a huge proponent of the time savings. I'm really very naturally inclined to do like not put in all the time up front and just like spend the time, as it comes. But when you actually get into the habit of doing this, it is unbelievable. It's like, wow, I don't have to worry about lunch any day of the week. We meal prep on Sundays. Sundays are only the day that we have to worry about meal prep, and the entire week you do not have to worry about your lunch at all. That is incredible.
I feel like I'm gonna try to not go on a whole tangent about weight loss and gaining muscle, but if your resolution is weight loss, gaining muscle, making better habits, then meal prepping makes it so much easier because you're likely counting calories, macros, whatever it may be. And to have you just do it one time, and then every day for lunch, you know what those numbers are. The amount of time that you spend figuring out what is in your meal and what you can and cannot have that day, it's crazy how much time that consumes. So if it's just done once, it makes your life so much easier. For us, we each lost 20 pounds this year. We spent a ton of time counting our macros and eating high protein meals. So we were having to weigh out how much chicken were in our salads and things like that. And that just takes a lot of time. So to have to do it just the one time was really nice and just made our goals more easily achievable.
Yeah.
I would say,
And even if you're not wanting to do the exact same meal, I think you did say this earlier.
Well, I was going to talk about
this. Even if you don't want to do the exact same meal, you could do, and we've done this,
You're
2
stealing
meals.
my thunder. I did not get there yet. Okay. I was going to say the biggest thing that people say to me about meal prepping is I could never eat the same thing every day for 5 days. We don't meal prep for 7 days. We usually meal prep just for the weekdays.
No, and I'll be honest, even someone like me who I really don't need that much change when it comes to the food, by Friday, some meals I'm like, I don't want to eat that.
The way that we do our meal prep is we do make the same lunch every day for the 5 days. However, if that is your biggest concern and you don't want to do that, then my advice for you would be to make the portion smaller and make 2 meals. So then every other day you're going to alternate. So on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you would have something, and on Tuesday, Thursday, you would have something. So you're going to have 2 meals throughout the week and every other day. So then you're not going to get as bored with them.
That's a really good one thing too that helps with the boredom is sometimes, like a lot of times we'll do like an apple with our lunch, but even just changing up like one of your sides on the lunch, that can really like make the whole meal totally different.
Or your sauce.
Yeah. You're stealing my thunder. I'm a big sauce person. I don't put a lot of sauce on it, but I just need a little bit. And maybe for like your chicken and rice bowls, you're like, I'm going to do barbecue sauce on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But then you want for the other one, I want it to be like more of a teriyaki glaze thing going on. Those are entirely different meals, even though the components, besides the sauce, are the same.
While we choose to make the same meal every day for the whole week, every other week we are making something different. So like if I'm making a chicken rice bowl this week, I'm not going to make that next week so that we don't get overly burnt out. So then next week I would make like a salad, and then the next week I might make a pasta one or whatever it may be. I'm going to change it up and have probably about 4 to 5 different weeks worth of meals that I know very well, and I'm going to switch them out. So basically a month's worth of meals is what I'm getting. I guess this is kind of getting a combo of meal prep and body goals, but you talking about sauce just made me go back to what we learned when we were counting our macros and losing our weight, is that sauce has so much calories, and it's hidden calories that you don't even think about. So
well, it depends on the sauce.
Sauces vary so much. And it just blew my mind. So if you are trying to achieve one of those goals, that would also be a piece of advice, to look at what you're consuming, because those also count towards what you're counting for yourself. So if you're having, 500 calories for lunch, you got to think about the sauce calories. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that might not be worth it. But also don't skimp too much, because you need to have something good. So maybe just have a little bit less. Moderation. That's what we've learned. Moderation is good.
But if you're thinking about that, like in the course of the week, say even if you're doing 2 sauces, you only have to do your 2 little calculations or think about it. You don't even have to, we weighed out all the stuff, but even if you're not going to go that hardcore of like literally weighing all your food, you're like, okay, this is an overall healthy meal. You're kind of looking at it in an overall perspective. That's still okay. And you're like, this sauce or whatever is going to be, for this part of the meal, and that's going to be probably within my goals. This sauce, same thing. I'm good. I've only had to make the 2 calculations.
And we have been talking solely about lunch meal prepping, but a ton of people do meal prepping for dinner as well. That's something that we haven't gotten into. We prefer to cook our meals fresh, and we cook a new meal every single night. So yes, that is a lot of work, but that's just what we prefer right now. But if you are looking to get into meal prepping for dinner, that's definitely an option as well. And maybe you might not portion them out into containers. Maybe you will. It depends on what goals you're trying to achieve, but maybe you just make a big casserole, something, you make it on Sunday and then you have it to heat up, especially if you're someone who's single or someone who's very much on the go, or maybe you have kids, whatever it may be that is consuming a lot of your time. If you don't want to eat out, then I would suggest making some bigger dishes ahead of time so that you don't have the excuse of going out, running to Chick-fil-A, whatever place is your favorite go-to on the go, and you know that you have it at home. You spent the time to do it. You spent the money to do it. So then you're going to feel excited to go back and have that at home.
Is it a hot take that I would love for us to start meal prepping more of our dinners?
No, but I don't know. Maybe we'll do it.
I'm definitely someone like, I am okay like having the same thing for our lunches for the week and for the dinners for the week. Danielle really does like the variety in the dinners.
Yeah, I do. And I like a fresh cooked meal. For lunch, it does not bother me at all because you're always bringing something to work anyways. But at home, I just like to, I'm not like a leftovers girly, like leftovers never were exciting to me. And I feel like that's basically what the meal prepping would be to me.
Well, the nice thing about meal prepping, speaking of leftovers, if you are not a leftovers person, when you meal prep for lunch, you probably will have no leftovers or very little because you pretty much portioned it out all correctly when you were making the food.
And if you don't know how to portion out like how much you're going to eat, then I would say going back to Pinterest or a cookbook. I am definitely a cookbook girly. I cook a lot from cookbooks. Using someone else's knowledge to help guide you in the beginning will be very helpful.
And one thing too, Danielle does find some really cool recipes and things that do take, I would say, a fair amount of time to make them. But when you distribute that out over the 5 meals that you're making, it actually isn't that big of a deal. I'm really someone that doesn't like to make like intricate meals like for every single dinner or every single like one-off meal. But when you're doing it for 5 meals, it's really not that big of a deal because it's like, oh, when you think about it for the time saving, it adds up.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about, we said all this information and you might be wondering if you have never done this before, okay, where do I even start? So this is what I do. It works well for me. Everyone is going to be different, but you can take from this what you want. And I hope that some of what I do helps. So what I do is on Saturday or Sunday, usually I do my shopping on Saturday and my meal prepping on Sunday. So on Saturday, I'm sitting down. I have a meal prepping calendar. Literally, you can make it yourself. It has every single day and a little space to put what meal you're having. And then on the right side, it has a shopping list. So I'm going to put down what I'm going to have for dinner each day, and I'm going to have one lunch meal that I'm making for the entire week. How am I coming up with those meals? I am first looking in my fridge and my pantry and my freezer and seeing what I already have. So if I know I have chicken breasts in the freezer and I know that I have like salmon left still in the fridge, I am going to for sure be eating those first.
Because like she said, use what we have.
Use what you have.
I'm bad at that. Danielle is helping.
So you got to be home. You got to be looking in your cabinets to see what you have. Then I'm going to start creating meals around the things that I have and see how many meals that's going to get me and how many more meals I need. Then I'm going to Pinterest or my cookbooks, and I'm going to come up with meals that I want. And a lot of times that's how I do it. But again, sometimes I'm going to the Kroger website and I'm going to see what's on sale and then try to find my recipe based on that. But most of the time I feel like I find the recipe first. And then I'm going to have all my meals planned out and all my grocery lists made now on my piece of paper. Going to the Kroger website, I'm going to go down my grocery list, make sure I don't skip anything, and find all the coupons for them. And then I'm going to make sure I'm in my budget. If I'm over budget, I'm going to go back a little bit and I'm going to say, okay, what can I lose? Did I add snacks in there that I don't need this week? Is one of the proteins too expensive and I need to switch it out for a different protein? Those kind of things. And make sure I'm in my budget. We very rarely ever go over the budget.
One little hack I would say, and this is something that has saved us a lot. If you're like a weekend warrior and you're out doing something and you're like, a lot of weekends I'm either busy or doing something and I won't have time to meal prep on a Sunday. If I would say overall, just pick a day of the week to do it. It doesn't have to be Sunday, but even if like your normal day gets thrown off, one thing that we do, we have kind of like our backup stuff, and our backups are sandwiches. We'll say, wraps, something that's very easy, something that you can really, just quickly put together, the night before or the morning of, that's just going to take a minute or two. And those are going to be the things that we use during the weeks that it's like, dang, my normal schedule got thrown off, or I was out of town and I'm coming back in. You can still meal prep if that happens. That doesn't mean that you're going to have all of it thrown out the window.
So the week that we came back from Christmas, we were just kind of all over the place. And so it wasn't even really meal prep. It was just buying the ingredients of bread, lunch meat, and apples. And then that's what we were having for the week. And so that just also helps save you time and money, but it's a little bit different. But you can definitely fall back on those things as well. So Saturday is the planning and the purchasing. And then for me, Sunday is the cooking. So I would say majority of the time we're having chicken in our lunches. So we're going to grill the chicken up, cut it into small pieces. That's my other piece of advice. If you are not having fun eating a ton of chicken, cut it into smaller pieces. Eating the big pieces just makes it much harder for some reason. So cut it up small, makes your life much more enjoyable.
You cut it into cubes, you could shred it, lots of different options.
Most of the time we just throw our chicken on the grill because it's so fast and easy. And then you prepare what your other ingredients are. If you're cooking some rice, lettuce, whatever it may be, and then I'm going to portion it out into my containers and put it away, and then I'm good for the week.
That is literally the easiest thing that you can do. It sounds so simple, but it's really not. You have to just be intentional about getting it done. It's going to save you time, it's going to save you money, but it starts with the intention because it is more work up front that one specific time, but it's going to save you all that time and money.
And I would say the most overwhelming thing is trying to do everything I said. If you've never done anything, barely any cooking, then don't do all the steps I just said your first go around. It's going to be so overwhelming. It's going to feel like it's too much for you. So just pick one thing to do and start with that. And you can always grow from there on your cooking, your meal prepping, but don't overwhelm yourself too much.
Yeah, you could just pick, I'm going to do meal prep for Monday and Tuesdays. And, that's going to be and try to stick to that for a little bit of time. You don't have to do the whole week.
Yeah.
So Danielle, what's your last piece of advice for the meal preppers out there or the want to be meal preppers? Should they do it? And what's your advice?
Definitely do it. As you can see, it's changed our lives, and a lot of people do it for a reason. It is helpful in creating healthy habits and not eating out and saving money. So I hope that you're leaving this podcast inspired and ready to tackle something new, or maybe you already do it, but you're going to do it a different way. I don't know. Hopefully you learned something.
You are capable. It's just a little bit of a hump that you have to get over. Just get it started and you will honestly be amazed in the time and money that it saves you.
Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to give this podcast a 5-star review. Happy New Year and go get those goals achieved. Bye.
Bye.